Okay. Okay, we're going to go live. We're live. Well, I'm just going to start because I know on the playback that people want to just go on the playback. People just want to go through the kaupapa and not wait for us to say hello to everyone. But kia ora, no mai haere mai, e te whānau. No mai haere mai ki te kaupapa. If you can't and they won't, I will. Ngā mihi nui kia koutou, ngā kaititiro, kia tai mai nei, mo tō tautoko. No mai hoki mai for those of you who have seen the past Zoes that I've had some really special guests coming up today. But first I wanted to start off with a little bit of housekeeping. This is a trigger warning, so if because we're going to be talking about sexual abuse and Māori kaupapa around that, please know that if any time anyone feels triggered or any stuff is coming up for you and you don't have support and you don't have the capacity to help yourself through what's coming up for you, I've got a list of, I'm going to do a screen share. And I'm going to share with you fellas, where is it? How do I do the screen share? There we go. I'm going to screen share with you guys a bunch of resources that basically shows some phone numbers and stuff that you can contact. No, not that one. This one. Oh, no. Sorry. There it is. Okay, sharing the screen now. So basically these resources are you can contact the police. There's the helpline to Wahine Trust. There's also Korowai Tumanako on there who we're talking to today. So these are New Zealand-based, Aotearoa-based resources only, so please take care of yourself now if you need to and make sure that you have what you need to proceed. Otherwise, you will need to do some research into your own areas. Thank you for those of you also who participated in the Zoe last, I think 2 weeks ago now. If you weren't there, please check it out. It's called Whakatōhea Mai, Being Believed. It was a talk with some national advocates of sexual abuse, Catherine McPhillips, Jessica, Louise, Nicholas, Benita, Tahuru's sister B, and Ken Clearwater. It was an amazing discussion, and something really unexpected happened on that Zoe. So check it out. It's in my news feed. Please share this kaupapa as much as you can and pass it on to anyone you feel who may need some support. I just want to do a quick reminder to those of you as to what you're watching and why I'm doing this kaupapa. If you can't and they won't, I will. Basically, it's about holding an offender to account, and that's the process that I'm going through. And when we hold individuals to account collectively and openly, scrutinizing and evaluating their behaviour of those who commit offence of sexual abuse, it can actually alter their decisions. It can make it also less likely for them to offend, and helps them work towards, I guess, basically being better humans, and gives the children, our kids, the opportunity for a safe future. And I'm hoping that if we create a momentum around individuals calling out the truth, not just calling out the truth, but actually holding them to account, because that's something that's really lacking with this. And that stuff can kind of cause an avalanche of stuff to happen and cause real change. And the other thing that I've learned through this is also that in regards to sexual abuse, it needs to be tackled by everyone available, from every angle, every level, every corner of society, within every culture and creed, from every opportunity, by every person in community, and I'd go so far as to say from within every family as well. And it's certainly not a solo conversation or solo effort. Which brings me to today's first meeting. I've got Russell Smith from Korowai Tumanako and Te Owai Gemmell from Te Ohaakii Hine, who both have incredible years of experience using kaupapa Māori values and principles in the sexual violence sector. Korowai Tumanako is a kaupapa Māori service I've actually engaged to support me through my journey of holding the sexual offender to account. Their program is designed to support iwi, hapu and whānau by applying kaupapa Māori and clinical knowledge and practices. They provide an integrated the offenders and prevention education. And we've also got Te Owai Gemmell, who is a beautiful queer who's and is a long time member of Ngā Kaitiaki Mauri, the Māori caucus of Te Ohaakii Hine, the National Network Ending Sexual Violence Together. So basically, instead of having the first meeting with them in private, I thought I'd do this live and share the reality of by myself. So I'm going to add them to our stream. Tēnei mihi, tō whakai ka kōrero tātou ka anuhi ki te kānuhi ki runga te pukamaka, mata, kia tō mahi me tō mātauranga hoki. He uria hau no Ngāti Mania poto ko tuinga kakapo toku tūtonu toku marae ko mania roa toku whakaruru hau. Hei raukura hau mō Ngāti Rākei ko Ngāti Waikora. I tipu wana au ki raro te korowai o Ngāti Rere ahu ko Mihirangi toku ingoa. Nau mai haere mai korua te kaupapa o te rānei ngā kaupapa Māori ratunga ngā mahinui kia korua. Nau mai haere mai. Oh.
Kia ora.
Let me just see. Oh, I think she's frozen again. Can you, kia ora? Oh, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Tēnā koe, tangi. Kia ora rā. Te mea tuakahi tēnā. Kia tuwhi. Kia ora. He uri ahau no te whānau Apanui, te Whakatōhea, peka tiki tōku manga tapu, ko tarana ki tērā, huri no tōku manga oku hapu, oku iwi, ko Te Owai Gemmell ahau. And so, just in regards to the mahi I do, I work with the Kaupapa Rapi Tora Trust, and kite is the mata kite or the vision towards being, and that's the purpose of this kaupapa, but I'm also involved in Ngā Kaitiaki Mauri, which is part of TOAH-HNEST, the elimination of sexual violence and all forms of violence. But I started back in 1985, beginning of the Whānau, which was the Māori sexual abuse wahine who broke away from rape crisis to set up Te Whānau. The reason being, Māori have a different way of dealing with their kaupapa, and even though rape crisis is very strict about male, Te Whānau was specifically keen to still work with our men no matter what. So this kaupapa today will kind of highlight the reasons why Māori women work closely with their men, even though there's many labels for them, but they're still our whānau, and that's what we have to remember. In terms of thinking about Oh yeah, Nora. Just a little bit about me, but as we go on, I can cover other areas. Nora, kia ora.
Kia ora, ngā mahi. Russell.
Kia ora whānau, ngā mihi kia koutou, tēnā koe e Mihirangi me korua, Te Owai, e rangatira.
Tēnā koe, Russell.
Ko wai au, ko imimi te maunga, ko awaro te awa, ko whangaro te moana. Noki Aldrich, me Doreen Renata, oku mātua tūpuna. Tā Hawaii, Ngāti Paki, Ngāti Uru, Ngāi Tāwaki, oku hapu. Ngāpuhi Ngāti Kahu, i whangaro ki iwi. Kōra rāraka Renata, toi toi. Tako ingoa. Engari, tingo te Pākehā, Russell Smith ahau. Kia ora whānau, I'm Russell Smith of Korowai Tumanako. I'm the co-director alongside Joy Te Wiata. And I'm parked on the side of the road up in Puketuna, just out from Waimate. So I hope you can hear me, and I managed to find a spot where I can get covered. But that's the nature of our work, you know. I guess when you're talking about Kaupapa Māori fire, you've got to go where the people are, because it's no good standing on the steps in the city and calling out to everyone, because a lot of our people can't afford to get to us. So we got to mobilise and get out there and meet the whānau where they're at. And you know, you're more likely to meet more whānau if you go to their whare. You might put on a few extra kilos because they all feed you everywhere you go. But the most important thing is you know, the mobility for some of our. I've just come back from.
Yeah.
I've just been in the Hokianga, and
right.
Rawane and all that, and but that's the nature of our work. Well, I love the work that we do. Our primary work is working with young people and rangatahi who have concerning sexualised behaviour and harmful sexual behaviour, and adults with harmful sexual behaviour. So part of our mahi is to, when we talk about accountability, I guess it's really the whānau that hold them accountable, you know. But one of the things that the whānau needs is good education and support to know how to supervise, support their whānau to take responsibility. So yeah, it's like you were saying, Mihirangi, almost everyone in this country has been affected by sexual violence. You know, we've been in a pandemic for 180 odd years now, and we're still in that pandemic. So the COVID, yes, while it's a nasty illness and sickness, there are more people that die from sexual violence and sexual harm every year from this blight on our people. And so, yeah, so that's a little bit about ourselves. So kia ora koutou whānau.
Kia ora. So I wanted to ask you both a question, like in regards to the statistics that we see, you know, in the newspapers and stuff, that this pandemic of sexual abuse is a Māori pandemic. For me, I've always had that feeling of like that whakaaro is so wrong because of the way that they do those surveys and the way that it's based being, you know, to me, like Māori, we work within whānau, within tribal groups, and we you know, hold people accountable. So therefore, we're more likely to say something because we all know each other. Whereas in Te Māori, Te Ohaakii, it's very different. What are your fellas' thoughts? Te Owai, what's your thoughts in regards to the statistics, and what would you say to that, especially for those of us affected by those statistics? Oh, I think there's to always. I think there's I'm not too sure if we can actually hear you Te Owai. There's a delay in I think there's still a delay. What am
I think firstly for me, when they say it's a Māori problem, I disagree with that wholeheartedly. And why? Because if you go back, and if we're talking about tikanga Māori and going back, or tikanga tangata whenua, should I say, if we go back and we look at the way, if we go back and look at it traditionally and how our children were treated by their male, our men treated our women and children. Oh. Sorry. Yeah, I'm picking it up with you as well, Mihi. Yeah, there's a break happening.
Yeah.
It's not flowing through. I believe when I'm picking up on your corridor as well.
You know,
Yeah, so
maybe
same happening with me as well.
I'm just wondering maybe if I should call you and I can have your voice on.
It's
here.
stagnated.
Yeah.
Even when you talk, Russell's clear. He's good. But even with your corridor coming through to my side, it's a bit unstable.
Okay, I'm just wondering if what
Are
we
you
could
picking
do.
that up?
I'm Russell, is my connection okay for you?
Yeah.
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 What I might do to Owai is, can I call you on the phone and have you
You're
speak?
not coming through now.
Yeah. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to call you perhaps because it's important to have you. Here we go. Okay, I'm going to ring you on your phone and hopefully you can talk through the phone instead.
So you're cutting up again.
Owai, can you hear me? Oh, I'm going to turn her.
Fine. Yeah, because it's breaking up. The only one that I can hear when he speaks is Russell.
Is I'm going to just mute her mic. I'm going to call you again. And then if we just have you speaking on the... If you answer the phone, if you answer it, we'll solve this problem. Ingenuity. Oh, maybe that's not going to work. Okay, no. I'm not too sure how to solve this.
She might have to turn her screen off.
Yeah.
Her end off. Yeah.
Oh, I'm just wondering if you turned your screen off and just had your voice.
Yeah, you've called me on my home.
It's not working.
Call me on my home line.
Okay, I'll call you on your home line. Can you just text me your in the chat? Can you just text or just message me? Text me your number and I'll call you on your home line. Sorry, Russell.
That's okay.
We are getting there.
Yeah.
Kia ora Miri, kia ora Jenny. Thank you guys. Kia ora Louise. Thank you guys. Akisha, I see your message there. I'm just going to put that up. It says, it happens too often. I can feel it won't end unless people are aware of it. People are comfortable to speak up against it and offenders are being held accountable because they seem to just be kept a family's secret and victims left to deal with it all alone. Oh, okay, now we've lost Russell. Okay. Oh, wait, can you hear me? Okay, this is not. Yeah, there's a real delay. Oh, where did Russell go?
Yeah,
okay.
I've just
yeah, it's just really delayed. I'm just going to try and see what's happened with Russell as he's just left as well. And so I'm not too sure if you can keep answering these questions because of the delay. But just in regards, oh, there he is, he's back.
I can hear you clear. Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you clear.
Okay. Maybe Russell, if you want to answer the question in regards to, I've forgotten the question now. What I was asking you.
Around the statistics.
Yeah, around the statistics and.
Yeah, look, I think when they talk about it being a Māori problem, it's certainly a problem for Māori, but it's certainly not because of what others might think the problem is. And I think if we look overseas into, say, on our Whānau in Australia and some of the statistics that have come out of the Northern Territories, right? Now these stats, they took a stat on the ethnicity of the people who were abusing Aboriginal children. They found that a high percentage of the abusers were non-Aboriginal, right? So they were tauiwi. And that the non-Aboriginal people, or tauiwi, had more victims per capita than what did Aboriginal whānau did. So, when I talk about my auntie and uncle, you will assume that I'm talking about one of my Māori uncles and one of my Māori aunties. But in actual fact, as we all know as Māori, auntie and uncle are forms of respect, whether they're Pākehā, tauiwi, Scottish, whatever. So there's an assumption then that when Māori, as abuse has happened within family Māori, they assume that it's the perpetrator is Māori. Well, that what we know is that anecdotally from the work we've done is that some of our tauiwi people who have done harm are more likely to have more victims. And it's a blight. It doesn't matter how we look at it. It's a blight on our community. I think the biggest issue for Māori, which is that Māori don't have access to Māori.
Yeah.
Right? They don't have access to us. I mean, you got Te Owai down in the coast, down in Opotiki, our whānau down there. You have Korowai up here, and we cover from Waikato all the way to Rerenga. And it's an indictment to have, within Ngā Kaitiaki Mauri, there are at very maximum, you've got 9 to 14 kaupapa Māori services that work in sexual violence. And but if you look at mainstream tauiwi, hundreds. So is it a problem within Māori? Yes, that is a problem. Māori don't have access to Māori, and that's our biggest issue. We know that the statistics that when Māori work with Māori, there's a whole story that they don't have to explain to us when we go in there, and we don't pathologise them. While we might use some of the clinical tools, we don't read them the same way as tauiwi and Pākehā. So, and the tools are Pākehā. So I mean, I'm for example, here, this is when people look at my whakapapa, 1 in 4 people in prison is related to me. I'm Ngāpuhi. We know that 50% of our prison population is Māori. We know that 50% of the Māori population in prison is Ngāpuhi. So that means that a quarter of the prison system are related to me personally. And that's, but yet you get stigmatized around that, right? So they assume that because you have these relatives in that. But we've got to look at why are they being incarcerated. And when we talk about sexual violence around statistics and success, what we know is that from the research done at Te Piriti, which is the prison treatment centre, is that when you increase kaupapa Māori of working with Māori, the success rate is higher for both Māori and non-Māori who go through that program. It went from approximately between 18 and 23% recidivism, reoffending rates, and it dropped through the floor to 4.8% reoffending rates. Now that's when they integrated kaupapa Māori into that system. It didn't just drop for Māori, it dropped for Pākehā and tauiwi or anyone that went through that program. So, you just have to look around access and availability. Look, I've just finished doing 1,100 kilometres since Monday.
Yeah,
You know?
I've noticed how busy you are, because I've been, obviously I've been asked to engage your services through this, and my reason being is because, from the research that I've done, going through the Pākehā system, going through the police, going through the court system does not work, was not right for me. Having said that, we need all options available for people, and it's not the be all and end all, but that's one thing that I've noticed in regards to your services. It's like you guys are spread so thin and underfunded and understaffed, and there's no equality in that. It's very, it's especially, like you say, it's a Māori problem because of that. If there were more services available. I wanted to have a talk with you, Russell, specifically in regards to what I'm doing and the process because this is something that I'm sure that nobody out there really knows, is what you guys actually do and the process of how that would look. So, like, for example, at the moment, I've got, all I've got is the phone number of the perpetrator, or the offender. It's all, it's someone that we know that's from my community. He's an uncle to people. He's, and I get the whole thing around wanting to, like, for me, I'm more interested in the holistic approach of having him come to the table and all that kind of stuff. But, like, how does that look in regards to the accountability? Like, there's so many questions, like, is it victim led? Is it whānau led? Is it service provider led? Is it, like, who evaluates the accountability? What are some examples of, like, cultural consequences and stuff like that? And how does that look for, say, in my situation?
Yeah, I think, Mihirangi, thank you for raising, for bringing yourself to the fore, and there are others out there that will be in a similar position to your own. And I guess one of the things that when we talk about accountability, locking these men up, some of them, when you lock some of them up, there's no accountability in it. They get 3 meals a day, they look at the walls, and they come out again. They don't hold, it costs us $125,000 to $140,000 a year to keep that person, that perpetrator, or that person who's done harm in those cell walls. Now, quite often, some of the men that we've worked with and the young people we've worked with would rather go to prison than to come into a program where they get challenged not only by ourselves. We are the conduits, right? We're not the experts. We are the ones that we work with the experts. The experts are the people who've been affected by the sexual violence. They're the experts. The people who've done the harm, they're the experts. We get to facilitate that conversation. Now, if people who are doing harm can't, the only people that really they're accountable to are the people who they've done the harm to, firstly. Secondly, they're accountable to their whānau. Thirdly, they're accountable to their hapu. And fourthly, they're accountable to everyone that they're related to or within their environment. But the only way they can take accountability is firstly acknowledging that the harm has occurred. Yeah. And that's always been a hard step for some of the people that we work with. I just want to say that a lot of the people that we work with aren't all adults. That a lot of them are children and young people with harmful sexual behaviour. So I just want to put that point out there, because sometimes when people hear me talking, they think I'm talking about, say, between a 40 to 60-year-old man who's done sex offending for many years. No, I could be talking about a 15-year-old boy who I've just dropped off at his mahi, who has been in a vulnerable point in his life and harm has occurred around, concerning sexual ideation and harm. Now, if we don't get to these people early, then really they're left vulnerable. And I think when it comes to accountability, I think we all have a role to play in that accountability. To call it what it is, it's sexual violence. They asked us years ago to stop using the word rape, and call it what, rape is rape. Doesn't matter how you look at it. But until the people start to understand, and especially people who do harm, understand that they will actually there's a growth that occurs when they start to take responsibility, and when they start to live in a healthy life that is free of harm. But I think one of the biggest, the people that we work with, the people who are the victims of the sexual violence, they are ultimately the ones that we support, because sometimes the perpetrators don't get to speak to the people who they've harmed. Quite often, some of the barriers to that is sometimes the therapists. And I say that gently, It's sort of like, because, I remember years ago, or not so long ago, one of our wahine wanted to do a face-off with the person that was on our program, right? And we got no problem with it. But their practitioner, not Māori, said, I don't think you're ready. And this wahine, all of 42 years old, says, I've been ready since day one, since the day that this person raped me. Don't tell me I'm not ready. Yes, it's traumatic, but we're here to tautoko them, even people like that. So I think sometimes our people are kept in treatment because it's an income, and we're not minimising the harm that happens to them, right? But what we're doing is don't take away the toa of our wahine. Support them, and only Māori can have that conversation with our wahine toa. That's a whole different kōrero, So I hope that's answered your question a little bit.
No, it's totally different to like working in Te Owai. Like when I was sexually abused, I then left the country and went to Australia and went through counselling services there. And I did counselling because I didn't have any whānau to help me heal. And I think that's a really important conversation, is that that's something that I didn't actually realize, that, my whānau can help me through this. And, I'm really super grateful that we're going to be going through this process together, which brings me to the point of, in regards to like an offender being in denial and what you've done and what you've witnessed over the years. Have you come up with a formula that helps them work with their denial to come to the table? Like, is it like, get the uncles to go pick them up and bring them to the marae and give them the bash, or not that we do that, no.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, no, look, I think everyone's different. I think that denial is a very Pākehā tauiwi word, because, we don't expect, to be honest, we don't expect people to talk about all the harm that they've done, because there's a lot of whakamā around that. But part of the journey for them is to move from that state of whakamā into a space of noa, and sometimes, sometimes, say for example, the difference between a rangatahi and an adult is that a rangatahi will only feel sorry because they got caught, right? So part of their work is sort of like that's why they've come out, some of them, not all of them, right? So, but as with adults, some of the adult people who have done harm, they may only, for some of them, that's why the program's so long. It's about 18 months to 2 years long, is because it takes them at least a year, some of these men, to even admit to everything they've done, And like we had one man in his 60s who had come in because he had raped his moko, and it, and over a period of 12 months, we found out that over 40 years, he had raped 12 people within his whānau. Wow. But if you come down with a hammer real quickly, Mihirangi, I'm talking about practitioners, not whānau, talking about practitioners, they will shut down and they won't talk. What we want to do is we need to get to everyone that they've harmed, so that they can get the help that they need. And that's why the complexity is so unique.
Yeah. So do you have some examples, or either of you have some examples of, like we spoke about this before, Russell, in the first meeting that we had with Catherine, in regards to some examples of accountability and what some whānau have done you know, I'm aware of my terminology as well. I'm learning through this myself. But in regards to what has some examples of what that accountability might look like once they've taken that responsibility?
Yeah, I think one of the things around accountability is, for example, when we set up safety plans and boundaries, the people who've been harmed have to be part of the setting up the safety plan. It's no good for corrections, no good for the police to put in the safety plans. Yes, they need to be there to enforce the safety plans that the whānau have come up with, but the people who've been harmed are the ones that need to set up those sorts of things, you know, because there are standard plans that people have to adhere to, but it's actually the whānau that know that person well. So when we're setting up mechanisms of accountability, the whānau are the ones that we have to support to hold them accountable.
Yeah. So in regards to maybe to Owai, if you can, I don't know if you can hear me, but in regards to like cultural consequences, and I know this is a conversation that I've had with a few people in regards to the excuses of the atua, and you know the relationship between Tāne Mahuta and Hine Ahuone, and that relationship, and that those stories of you know pakiwaitara that people have used that brought to the forefront, and what is the response and the answers to that?
I think for me, Mihirangi, can you are you picking up on? Are you able to pick up on it? Is it clear? What I'm just going to support what Russell had spoken about earlier, Russell. In terms of whānau, it's whānau that makes the decision, and often we're called in to facilitate and navigate that journey forward. Often when we're working with whānau, often going back to our whānau, the whānau makes a decision. And one example for me is when we had a young man who had sexually abused a young girl. Well, it was her auntie. They called the main meeting together, and we usually have we've had many of those types of meetings where the whānau actually, we may start working with the individual first, but it's the whānau that we actually start to pull together the whole group and start. And the reason for that, because then the whānau are able to get on and work with their whānau. There's lots of other disclosures during that time as well. But the main key of it all is that whānau begin to heal and do it together as a whānau. Yeah. Just in response to your question, Mihirangi, what was that question again? I kind of missed it.
Oh, it was
I was more hooked on Russell's kōrero and just supporting what he had said. What was the question you wanted to know, going back to Ngā Atua Māori ne? You were referring to Ngā Atua Māori?
Yeah.
And about Tāne and Hine Ahuone. For us, I suppose one of the, I learned really quite early that when we use our pūrākau, those pūrākau are true as opposed to pakiwaitara, and that's what we've got to get right here sometimes. We're using pakiwaitara, and often you've got Tauiri referring to it as Yeah, and it's not a myth and legend. It's what guided us. It was our social. It's part of the social policies that we know about today. However, for Māori, when they used that background, they didn't refer to incest or anything like that because that was an atua. It was considered an atua over the human race. But out of that, there's a lesson in terms of how we progress as mankind, as a human race. And understanding that story and the mana of the wahine, which was Hine Chitama, and her taking control back when she left and moved on down to Rarohinga and became Hine Ahuone, Hine Nui. And so there's and they talk about it being a shame. Whoa, our people, our wahine didn't know what shame was. It was shame was never a whakaro within te ao Māori or within te ao tangata whenua. So sometimes we're getting it kind of crossed over and mixed up, and the terminology we're using is an English whakaro that actually dilutes and waters down what the true meaning or essence of that kōrero is about. You know, so yeah, I hope that kind of answers it a little bit. I might have gone around a little bit about that, but we're pretty adamant. If we're talking about ngā mea o mua, ngā tikanga o mua, we're actually talking about those traditional things that we, as tangata whenua, were guided by in terms of those pūrākau. Those were like, today they refer to them as, it was what guided us. It's similar to the chuku panels on the wall. It wasn't just to beautify the building or the place or it was actually telling us in terms of work with each other, interact with each other. It was the potama, the ihu, the nihu, all the different ones. There's so many on the walls of the tupuna that actually guided the people throughout life. And so at the end of the day, here today, they talk about it being the research that's been gathered. Lots out there that actually supports that kōrero too. You have people like what's her name, also our Leone Pihama, and they talk about all of those very things, about the way in which our people were guided, as opposed to today. Yeah.
I have in regards to like Māori leaders in the community and leadership, there was a kōrero that I've had with many others in regards
to my what's her name still unstable, eh? I can see that.
Yes, but it catches up via it actually catches up. We just have to wait a few minutes and then it catches up. So the part I have is in regards to leadership and Māori leaders and using, people using their power to offend. Russell, would you like to speak to that? And what does that look like in, to our Māori? We've had this conversation before, but yeah.
I think one of the things is we never ask tāne to man up, right? Because being a man, we all know what people talk about, you know, to man up. Well, we don't ask people to man up because the ideology of what it is to be a man isn't the same as being a tāne. And when we talk about being a tāne, like Whai has talked about the po, right? The reason that we have po tāne and po wahine, the kaitiakitanga of our people, right? So when tāne understand that they are tāne, then they'll understand who wahine is. But until they understand who tāne are, they won't understand who wahine is. So that's part of the mihi that we do, you know, that when they breach and come out and you know, so those are some of the challenges. One of the other things is sort of like, you know, there's this I just want to, there are whānau that are very articulate and they speak fluent te reo and they can take you all the way back to io matua, all the way down to their whakapapan bloodline, yet they've sexually offended against numerous tamariki, right? Now, we say that person, like any other person, has abused that tikanga to achieve their own ends. The same way that a person who's in authority, like a police officer, like a counsellor, like a social worker, they use the authority in that tikanga to hide the abuse. And so, you know, someone might come to us, but what they actually do is they trample on the mana of that tikanga. And when they trample it and they don't fully understand it, we don't say the tikanga is not worth something. We say that they have abused the tikanga. And so until that tikanga in that whakapapa is restored, that rarurari, that hara, will always remain. So those are some of the things that Te Owai and our Whānau and Ngā Kaitiaki Mauri, you know, these are some of the challenges. Now, if they can't have that conversation in a tauhi organisation, that's the barrier, you know. To be a man is to, okay, you've got to do this. You know, they're very tauhi frameworks, but to be a tāne is a whole different scope. You know, I'm still understanding what it is to be a tāne. I'd never tell Joy or Te Owai what it is to be a wahine. That's not my kōrero. You know, my kōrero is to understand who I am so I can keep our whānau safe. And I think that's when whānau, especially men, step away from that po. Like for example, someone says, oh, that kaumātua abused me. We say, no, that kaumātua didn't abuse you. That person who used that role as kaumātua abused both that role and abused you. The kaumātua didn't abuse you at all. You know, because there's a tikanga around being kaumātua.
Yeah.
And a lot of our whānau, that's the journey they're on, right? So yeah, that's some of the tikanga and the kaupapa and all that. And I have the good fortune of having our tuahine Te Owai and Hera, and you know, I can't be who I am without my tuahine. Can't do it, and that's where our tāne need to come to. We think we can stand out there, and when we walked from Auckland to the Cape about men stopping violence, wasn't about men coming in and taking over the role. It was about tāne stepping into who they are. Not to take the role away from our wahine, but to stand with them. So that's part of the role, how we teach our tāne and our rangatahi to step into who they are, because it's their whakapapa. We're not asking them to be anything they're not. If you're Ngāpuhi, learn about Ngāpuhitanga. If you're Ngāti Kahu, learn about Ngāti Kahutanga. You know, those are the things that will keep you safe, because the more you learn about Ngāpuhitanga, the more you learn about Kaitiakitanga, around your hapu and your iwi, the less you're inclined to do this harm, because the harm doesn't sit in there. So you need to spend more energy, well, I need to spend more energy in understanding Ngāpuhitanga. That's about it in a nutshell, you know?
Yeah. We have a pathway here, which I'm going to put up on the screen. Where is it? Oh, no, I can't see it. There it is. Oh, Ki taku whakaaro, this is from Mr. Untouchable. Ki taku whakaaro, ko te hia katoa, me te mangere ka tukuna e tātou o tātou iwi kia tino nui rawa atu ma te kati o tātou kānohi. A whaia te oa, I'm not too sure if you can hear me. If you're still on there, if you can see that pātai or hear that pātai, if you could. Maybe I'm not too sure if you can see that. Right. Maybe what I'll do is I will.
Yeah.
I'm going to pull that down because it's just a really long delay in. Oh. I think that I'm not too sure. It's just. I think the delay. So, I'm realizing, Russell, that you're actually probably needing to go really soon because we did say that we only had an hour. I wanted to ask you the question pertaining to.
Yeah. Can you hear me? In terms of the response, what I think what he's actually asking is sometimes we've been shut down, we've been down for too long, and when it comes to the harm, it's our men's voice. The voices of the men being closed down too long, able to come forward, to be able, what I'm picking up from is kōrero. Did you?
Okay.
Yeah, it's been, it's closed down. Sometimes they can't get the dishes out, I suppose. Being able to produce forward their own whakaaro about what happened for them. That's what I think.
Kia ora whaia. Russell, just one last pātai for you is in this, just so people can gauge the process and myself as well, in regards to the offender in my situation. In the case that he remains in denial, like where to from here? Like what would your advice be to me or to anyone else in this situation, and in regards to moving forward and trying to move forward?
I think really with people who are in denial, quite often, if you have whānau around them that this person respects and listens to, it's to get to them, but also what we've done in the past is we've met with the people around that person, which is like, for example, we're flying into around the country, we won't say where, next Friday, and we're going to be doing a hui, and we're going to do exactly what I'm about to tell you. We're going to meet with the whānau around this person who's in denial, so to speak. And we're going to do is have a conversation about how they might be able to talk to them about it, and how they might want to address it, and how they might to put a plan together to have the conversation with them. Because quite often the people around, for example, this particular person, have been conditioned to that person's behaviour over many years. So when you tell them that this person has abused me, the people around them quite often might say, I don't believe you, I don't, or they might say, oh, that's terrible, but go quiet and not say anything, or they might just look at you like nothing's happened or they haven't heard anything. And that's not unusual, because quite often, Mihirangi, people, whānau, don't know how to talk about it. Hey, we're experts, Te Owai and I, in this field, and some of the whānau we work with find it difficult to listen to, to even disclose. So it's really giving some resources to the people around the people that this person that you're talking about, and giving them some education. Then they they hold the mana on how they go forward in that. And they will pick up what they need to do, because they're the experts, on how to articulate it to them. And if we need to be present for that, which is what this whānau has asked us to do, so Joy and I have to be present so that they have people there that have worked within the sector. So it's a different kaupapa. And usually the denial is more around, what the denial is around, they've held this guise for so long. To take that mask off and to remove that guise is quite ugly for them. But what they don't realise is when you take the guise down, is then you can start stepping into the mana of who they are. But not until they start stepping into that, So yeah, those are just some of the ideas that we would suggest, Mihirangi, meeting with people around them. And the first, quite often we've had one whānau, we had 3 hui, before we even got to have the conversation with the person who'd done the harm. But what that was about was when the whānau were having an argument about, I don't believe you, or I think they're right, and all this, the reason they're having that conversation is they need to put the difficulty back on the person who did the harm. The reason they're arguing is because they've been conditioned also, and they need to be gentle. We want them to be gentle on each other. They haven't done the harm. Sometimes but by, to some extent, without addressing it, they are supporting the silence around it.
Yeah.
But in saying that, we don't want to stigmatise. At the end of the day, that's the person that it rests at their feet, the person who did the harm. And so it's not one size fits all. And we won't even start that conversation. We know the Te Owai. but that's something that we would do, before we even get to meet with that person. Like with your journey, we started engaging with you, I think, a couple of months ago, Mihirangi?
Yeah.
So before we even might get to that point, for one whānau, it took them 12 to 18 months. But the journey between when we first met to the time we met with the person who perpetrated, the healing was immense.
Yeah.
Because finally, the people who had been harmed finally got to have a voice, and it's the need to hear the wahine toa voice in this,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Did you want to speak to that Te Owai?
Yeah.
Okay.
What I was saying around Hohodon, tika, whaia. Hōhaurongo is the way, you know, to move through the time.
Yeah. So can you hear her, Russell? Because I have. Oh, there she is.
No, I was just reading her message.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, there's messages. I haven't even noticed the messages.
But yeah, Hōhaurongo is like, in Te Owai has a lot of experience in that area. It's the way that we work with our people. But, and you know, only Māori can do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm just going to read what she's written here. Te Haurongo process tikanga is important to begin the healing moving forward. This tikanga allows the whānau to reconnect kia kotahi ai ngā whakaro ki ngā anga whakamua whaia te ara toiora. Whānau already have the answer. Our job is only to facilitate the journey forward. Yeah, kia ora korua. I just have one last... Okay, I'm just going to ask one last little partai, and that is in regard. So for me, this whole process is of coming out publicly is purely also to encourage people to come forward and hold the offender to account. So what would, in regards to your service, Russell, and your mahi, what would you say to someone out there that isn't coming forward, and how to come forward within Kaupapa Māori?
I think one of the things I'd say to someone is, firstly, you know, there are three things. Firstly, you got to stop the harm you're doing, and that includes the silence around it. Secondly, is to talk to someone that you trust. Not just anyone, someone you know that's got a proven trust record within your whānau. And thirdly, reach out and get help and start having the conversation. The amount of tāne that have told us how freeing it was for them to begin that kōrero, like Whaia Te Owai, I was talking about Hōhaurongo. Hōhaurongo comes from the time that they start to get it out. And like that kōrero, that question around the silence around the silence of the tāne incident, quite often just encouraging them to talk out about it, the harm they've done, and to get help. And we've never had...
You're able to
never had anyone ever come forward and say they didn't benefit from taking responsibility. In fact, it was absolutely the opposite, Mihirangi. When they started to take responsibility, they felt it was quite liberating and freeing for them, you know. He whakanoa, he whakawā, he taupo o ngā kōrero.
I'm wondering if there's some kind of like way or possibility of those who have offended within Māori to be able to come forward and share, you know, how they've come out and taken ownership. I think it would be really empowering if that was a possibility, not for their shame or to take, you know, whatever, but more to the point of being able to
it's still
be an example
up for me at my end.
Yeah,
I think the biggest struggle around having someone speak openly, you know, people have only just come to grips with speaking openly about family violence, around, you know, domestic violence. They've only just started talking about that. The country, I'm not sure whether the country's ready for a person who's done sexual crimes on children, for them ready to disclose and be open about that. But I think you're absolutely right, Mihirangi. If there was someone that could speak out about it and to actually take responsibility, that's, you know, the country isn't quite ready for that, because while we keep saying burn them all and put them on an island and kill them all, you know, if that's what people want to do, then that doesn't, you know, this mokopuna, we did some mahi today, that 14-year-old, 15-year-old, there's no way in hell they're going to come forward. You know, but if we start to say, hey, it's really important you get help, and you need to listen to the people that are getting you to that help, The ultimate is for them to stop doing the harm. That's the ultimate. The ideal, we look forward to the day when the person who's done the perpetration says, hey, look, put my hand up, I need help. That's the ideal. We are full of people who have been sexually abused and harmed, but we are still in want around having people who are doing harm to put their hand up and say, look, I really need serious help around that. It's starting, but we've still got a long way to go.
Yeah. I'm just going to read what Te Owai's response was. Using their own whānau or friend that they feel comfortable to speak up with without feeling whakamā and feeling comfortable to do that without judgment. Often they have been victims themselves, but never knowing what was right and wrong. Yes, the Stan Walker story is an example of how he is moving forwards. Yes, and yeah, that's massive. And Stan's story is absolutely huge, especially coming from within Te Ao Māori. And yep, I got tickets to his show. I'm going to go see him, and I'm hoping I get to have a kōrero with him. Well, I think it's I think we're going to let you guys head off because I know how busy you are, Russell. And
yeah. No, thank you, Mihirangi. Just before I go, he whakawāte te noi I mātou, he whakawāte te au oto o te irunga I mātou, whakawāte te taurekerekatangi I mātou. He wāranga mai mātou I runga a te Ewa Māori ora. Kia ora whānau.
Kia ora. Ngā mihi nui kia kōroa mō tō kōrero, mō tō pukingatanga, mō tō mātauranga hoki. Kia ora whaia. Thank you so much for being with us. And yeah, you fellas take good care. And I just want to, thank you all for being here. Kia ora.